see the seam where those two boards or three boards came together, but the average person, we're building it for regular people, and they won't necessarily see those joints if you're very careful about the boards you choose and how you put them together. All right, so I've got a couple examples here from a project that I'm working on, and I think they really show in a really good way how you can use grain and color to get those boards to look like they actually are one single board. So let me show you the examples. Now what I've got here are two tabletops, both for a tilt. This one is made of walnut. So there are a couple of tricks that I employ to just, now if you notice, this has basically, a couple of sapwood spots. That's another trick we'll talk about later. But ultimately the boards, the primary heartwood color here is the same on all three of these pieces. And that tends to help the illusion that this is one single board. If it varies in color too much, the eye will be able to tell that that's a different board there. On this one, it's a little bit different. I've got some streaking here in the middle, so there are multiple colors going on, kind of like the sapwood on this guy. But overall, these are the primary areas of color here, this darker brown, and that's very consistent across the board. The second trick has to do with grain. Now, if you look on this one, you can see there's a very wavy grain pattern, and we've also got, well, I guess you could call it figure. Some may call it blotching. In cherry, it's very common, but when it happens repeatedly like this, you get these dark spots, and then if it's in a pattern, it looks like what we would say as a positive looking figure as opposed to blotches, again, reinforcing the illusion that it's the same piece of material. Pretty much the same thing on this side. The grain, we've got a little cathedral pattern here, some straight grain there, so there's a lot more. Now getting a good grain and color match is really something that starts at the lumberyard. Well before is fairly close in terms of color and grain. You don't necessarily want to buy one board, not going to go together. And you really want to think about the project you're building. If you have an idea of the most prominent pieces like a tabletop, you could look at the boards you're buying and ballpark the amount and say, well, looks like I could get a piece here, I can get a second piece from down there, and you can get an idea of colors and grains. I do the best I can, and I'm getting better, but ultimately, one thing that saves me a wider panel, that it comes out of one board. Right now, of course, a single board will generally have a fairly consistent color and grain pattern throughout. So for something like a small tabletop, I could look at this board and try to find the spot on it where I would want to is roughly the same color down here as it is up here. And the grain in most boards is also consistent throughout, so you could chop it into smaller pieces, and it's really just stacking the cards in your favor that both grain and color will match up. Now the final trick I like to employ is distraction, and both of these boards use that very well. This one in particular is actually comprised of three separate boards. There's two on the ends here, and then you've got one in the middle. This is comprised of only two boards, and the joint's right down the center. So what I did here was I left the sapwood in. That's something that a lot of people will cut out. I just wanted something that looked really cool, and the sapwood over, so it makes it a little bit harder to see because the eye is so drawn to the fact that there's this color variation and the joint line is right in line with the grain in the sapwood. The average person will look at this and they will never know that there is a joint going all the way down here, at two joints I should say. Now, a little bit of a less extent here in the walnut piece, but you can see there's a light area in the middle. That light area crosses both of these pieces. So it brings them together and makes it look like this is one single light zone, when in fact it's just two boards that were butted up together and they both just happen to have a lighter streak. Put those together, now that seam just disappears. As you get more experience under your belt, you'll find that these things just become second nature. You don't really have to think too much about matching boards. It's just something that you do as you're selecting your material and cutting out the rough boards in your shop. You start to think along those lines and you just can't not think about it. It just becomes an automatic thing. You do run into a problem then where sometimes you just don't have the right boards on hand. You look at everything you've got and you just can't find a match that looks good. And sometimes that's the price you pay for perfection, and you may need to go back and buy some more boards to make sure you get just the right look that you're going for. And sometimes it's worth it, some projects it's not, but that's up to you. All right, so I hope this helps you on your journey to making multiple boards look like single boards. Thanks for watching.